Leanne here on Grady's Mom to do a video that I've been wanting to do for a while now, but I just haven't had the opportunity until today. So this video is going to be about reselling your kids' clothes. Most of you guys know, who have been following me for a while, know that I resell Grady, my son's clothing. I do it for a few reasons. Number one is I'm not having any more kids, so I have no need to hold on to them. If I were going to have more kids, I would just hold on to his clothing to obviously use it for the next kid. But since I'm not, I resell his clothing because obviously I want to make some money back. And I use the money that I make to resell his clothing to fund new clothing. Because as you all know, kids, babies, toddlers, they grow so fast, and I feel like it's just hard to keep up. And I'm sure with more than one child, it's even harder to keep up unless you're handing those clothes down to each other, something like that. But in my case, it's very hard to keep up between clothes and shoes. So I have found, since my son was pretty much a baby, for me, it just works to resell his things, a majority of his things, again, to be able to fund new items. So I wanted to share with you some ways that I do that. There are several different ways that I resell his clothing. One way is on eBay. And another thing, let me back up a little bit. What I do is when I have a significant amount of clothing that I need to sell, like let's say for example, right now he is in size 4 or 5. It depends on the brand. So let's say I have a bunch of size 3 clothing that he no longer fits into. What I will do first is I will go through all of the clothes that no longer fits, and I will just sort of inspect them, to make sure they don't have things like stains or holes or need repair. And then I will separate them into things that have stains or holes or need repair versus things that are in excellent, kind of like new, sellable condition. Now the things that need repairs or have holes or they're stained or they're just really worn, chances are I will just toss them before I even get to this point of sorting through them. If they're really beat up or stained or gross to the point where I can't even donate them, I will just toss them because I don't expect someone to want to accept or buy used or stained or clothing that's really worn. Most of the time, I find that the clothing that I do hold on to resell is in really, really good condition. One of those reasons is because I hang dry our clothing. So although we do have a dryer that we use for things like sheets, towels, underwear, socks, as far as our actual clothing, I hang dry it. So our clothing doesn't get shrunken from the dryer. I know a lot of times with kids' clothes especially, you'll put in a pair of pants and they will come out looking a little bit shorter over time than they were originally. So Grady's clothing is all true to size because since it doesn't go in the dryer, that helps to keep it original, to its size. It doesn't shrink at all. So that does help with the resale value because I am sure when I do list his items to mention in the description that his clothing does not go in the dryer, so it's true to size. I find with pants, sometimes that can become an issue more than shirts. So I sort through the clothing and I usually separate it into categories. And the categories, usually there's 2 main ones, which are designer clothes and non-designer clothes. And obviously his non-designer clothes pile is usually larger. And those would be clothing items that he uses for play or not so dressy, brands like Old Navy or things from Target like the Circle brand. Or there's another brand from Target I'm drawing a blank on that's really popular, but things like that. And then some things from Gap or some things from Crazy 8 or some things from Gymboree. Those would all be sort of in one category. And then the other category would be designer things. So things that I spent a significant amount of money on. Now, even when I do buy him designer things, I either buy them on sale or secondhand. I have no problem personally also buying clothes from other moms and other people secondhand. I just feel like it's a nice community and a nice way to have your kids wearing something and then be able to pass it along to someone else and vice versa. So I usually start again by separating into designer brands and non-designer brands. And then what I do is I have a few ways that I sell. So one is eBay, and if you are not too familiar with eBay, if as far as the selling aspect of it, you'll have to set up an account, you'll have to make sure it's linked to a PayPal account, which is how you get paid, and then you'll have to take pictures, and this would go for all the different ways that I sell. You have to photograph it unless you're obviously selling in person, which I will get to in a moment. So as far as eBay goes, you'll have to set up an account with a PayPal and all of that. You have to take pictures. I recommend taking as many pictures as possible without going overboard. Obviously, if you're selling a black t-shirt, then you have to just use your judgment. So you just take your pictures, write your description, set a shipping cost, unless if you're going to pay for shipping, or if the buyer, if it's free shipping and it's included. So those are all little things you have to figure out on eBay. And then you just kind of hope for the best. The only really way to guarantee on eBay that you're going to get a particular amount that you want is by setting a reserve price, which means, say if you're selling a pair of jeans that you're not willing to take under $20 for, you'd want to go ahead and set a reserve price for $20, which means that if there are bids on those particular jeans and the bidding does not get up to $20, then the item does not get sold, so you would keep the item. So that's just a little tip for eBay. Another thing for eBay is to keep in mind that eBay is going to take a cut. So if you sell an item for $20, eBay is going to take a percentage of that. I believe it's between 10 and 20%. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's somewhere between 10 and 20% that eBay will take. PayPal will also charge you their little cut for their PayPal fee for you using PayPal to do the transaction. So those are just a few things to keep in mind with eBay. I would say out of all these methods of the way that I resell clothing, eBay is the least used method, but I just wanted to mention it because I do like eBay. I have sold things on eBay, and I'm not saying that eBay is not a good option. If you're already an eBayer with your own eBay store or something like that, it might work out better for you because you're familiar with it, and you might have like a lesser fee if you have an eBay store. So that's one option. The second option, which is definitely in my top 3 ways that I resell clothes, is selling in person. So I have a handful of local girlfriends that I physically bring the clothing to that Grady has grown out of, and they are able to literally cherry pick through all of the clothing and pick out the items that they want, and then I just sell those items to them right in person at a very good deal. Now, that way is good for a lot of reasons. One, it's going to somebody that you know, which is always nice, and 2, you don't have to pay any shipping costs. Shipping can be really expensive, and every year the Postal Service raises its rates, to keep up with all of their costs and everything. So avoiding shipping costs is great. I have a couple friends really local to me within 10 minutes that I physically can drive to their house in 5-10 minutes, show up with all the clothing or whatever the case may be, and they can, like I said, cherry pick the items that they want. I give them a great deal on it. They're happy because they saved money. I'm happy because I made some money back to use towards Grady's new clothes, and I don't have to ship anything. So that's really nice. And it's definitely, like I said, that's in my top 3 ways of reselling Grady's clothing. Probably my number 1 way that I resell clothing is on the Facebook garage sale groups. So it seems complicated, but it's really not. If you're on Facebook, there's a search bar, which we all know about. You would just, if you have a lot of clothes from Carter's, or a lot of clothes from Gymboree, or a lot of clothes from Gap. I know that a lot of us moms tend to have our favorite places to get our children's clothing for whatever the reason may be. Now, I have a variety of places that I like to buy Grady's clothes, but definitely one of my most commonly stores that I purchase his clothes that most commonly is Gap. So if I were, for example, to have a bunch of Gap clothing that I wanted to sell, I would go on Facebook and search under Gap resale garage sale page, Gap resale groups. There are several of them. Pretty much almost every major clothing brand for kids or adults has its own resale page or pages. You'll find sometimes that you might have a certain brand of clothing and there'll be several different Facebook groups to resell those, which is great. So I always look for the one that looks like it is active, meaning there are people interacting and members interacting on the page. And then I always check to make sure it doesn't look like a dead group, that maybe there's not that many members, there's not that much activity. I always try and find a group that looks active with as many members as possible, because the more members and the more active the group, obviously the more views your item will get. So if, for example, if I had a bunch of Gap things specifically that I wanted to sell as a lot, grouped together, I would take a picture of the items together and I would list in the description that they are all Gap and I am selling them all together. I have found by selling things together in a group a lot, all of the same size, sometimes you can have more luck, because chances are if one item is the same size as the rest and somebody is interested, it just makes it easier to buy a group of items. Also, you can ship those items all together in a flat rate box rather than shipping 20 different items individually, because you'll have to buy the mailing, mailing boxes or mailing plastic poly mailers. Just things to keep in mind if you're going to look into reselling your kids' clothes, especially if you're going to be shipping them. Obviously, with the flat rate boxes from the post office, those are free at your local post office. But if you're not going to go that route and you're going to sell each item one by one, or maybe a couple here, a couple there, chances are you're going to have to purchase the bubble mailers or poly mailers yourself and then individually package it all up. You're probably, if you don't have a scale at home, you're going to need to physically go to the post office. I have a postal scale. It's paid for itself many times over the years, from me being able to weigh something, package it up, and print the label right from home, and avoid standing in line at the post office to get all my packages weighed. These are all little tips I'm trying to give you guys, because I know there's a lot of people that haven't really sold a lot online and don't know all of these things. So if I'm being repetitive for those who know, I do apologize, but I wanted to be thorough in this video. So the Facebook resale groups are great. I am actually going to link down below in the description box a few of my favorite groups. I'm not going to link all of them because I belong to a lot of different groups for reselling, but I will link down below a few of my favorite groups for reselling kids' clothes. And then probably rounding out my top 3 for the way that I sell my son's clothing, as well as other items. Toys he's grown out of, books he's grown out of, even household things that I don't want that I know I could sell. I go on Facebook again and I search for local garage sale groups. I'm in South Carolina on the Charlotte, North Carolina border. So when I first moved to the area, I got on Facebook and I searched for Charlotte, North Carolina, and surrounding areas, resale group pages, garage sale pages, and I've done a lot of different transactions on those pages. Whether it was selling furniture, whether it was selling household things, whether it was me buying things from people, or selling lots of Grady's toys, different things grouped together that he grew out of, whatever the case may be. I use the local garage sale pages a lot as well. Now, a few things about the local pages. One is, yes, you don't have to ship anything. You can just meet the person, exchange the money, and be on your way. There's no shipping involved. But one thing to be very careful of on the local groups is if somebody messages you about items or an item you have for sale, I would recommend not having them come to your home or even you going to their home. For one, I don't really trust a lot of online things with, somebody saying, oh, I'd like to purchase this. Can I come to your house and pick it up? Or me wanting to purchase something and the person telling me that I need to come to their house to pick it up. I would suggest meeting in a public place, just because that way you are you're in a public place. You don't have to worry about a stranger coming into your home or you going to someone's unknown, home where you don't know them, unknown territory. You just really can never be too sure with people online in this kind of situation. So I always like to say, let's meet at a public place. Usually it's at a Target or a Walmart parking lot. Obviously in the middle of the day, I wouldn't really recommend doing a transaction at 11 o'clock at night, even if it was in public. So I like to meet in a public place in the middle of broad daylight. I like to either exchange, phone numbers and maybe shoot each other a text or a quick phone call before you meet to make sure, both people are on the same page, both people are going to be there at the same time, that kind of thing. I've heard some horror stories about people going to meet in person and someone not showing up, or someone being an hour late, or miscommunication. So, there is some gray area with meeting, in person, But me personally, I've had a lot of success with doing that as well. Even when I lived in New York, I belonged to the local, garage sale pages there in New York. And then when we moved, I went ahead and just became a member for the local pages, in the Charlotte surrounding areas, to do different transactions as well. So those are the main ways that I resell clothing and just things in general. So eBay, my local friends, the Facebook brand pages like Gap or Carter's or any brand, guys, name it, there is a resale page for it. There's upscale resale pages for designer items. There are regular garage sale pages where anything goes, and there are specific pages for specific brands, which is nice if you have a lot of that specific brands items to sell. And other than that, that is really how I do it. I would probably say about 3 times a year, definitely at least twice, usually like in the fall and the spring, I will do a major sort of purge of the things that he has grown out of from last season. And I will get rid of the things in the ways that I aforementioned. And that's pretty much how I do it. As far as how I decide what's going to be sold where, I either do it by brand. If I have one of my local friends that's interested in a lot of things, I will maybe give them first dibs before I list other things. But for my designer things that I buy for So designer things, guys, I usually try and sell those on the designer brand pages on Facebook, because I found in a few years of doing it, that's the way that I can recoup most of the money. Because if you are selling, for example, some Burberry clothing, just for an example, I find that people who are on those pages, on the Burberry page in particular, they're accustomed to buying those kinds of things. So very specific brands, designer brands, the people who are on those particular pages are usually, again, accustomed to buying those types of things, or obviously they probably wouldn't be on there. So I hope this gave you guys some insight on how I do it. I've been asked a lot to do this video, but I just haven't, like I said in the beginning, gotten around to doing it. And I wanted to be very thorough and give you guys all the little tidbits and tricks and things that work for me and things that didn't, and just to give you guys as much insight as I possibly could. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Good luck if you are going to be getting into the reselling of your kids' clothes or just things in general if you're looking to do a purge. And again, I will have linked down below my favorite Facebook resale groups for kids' clothes and just stuff in general. And be sure to check on Facebook for your local garage sale pages. Because then you can avoid shipping costs, and sometimes you even meet people that you can resell to constantly, and you can almost even build a friendship with that person, and sometimes you end up buying things from each other, and then it just kind of turns into a constant cycle of reselling and buying from each other, which is really nice. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great day, and I will see you all very soon. Bye, guys.